Dear friends, I am going to talk to you about Indian concepts of business management. Probably the world needs Indian concepts of business management today more than ever before. There are many reasons for that. One is we have already tried the Western model of business management, and what we have found is that the economic growth, industrial prosperity, economic uprising that we have witnessed is hollow in sight. Those people who have admired the Western model of business management are themselves today saying that this is not going to help us in reaching sustainable development or inclusive growth. The companies which adopted the Western model of business management are also today partially dissatisfied. There is a need to look at different options. Growth can happen only if you are willing to change, adapt, learn, and be flexible. I have spent my times in learning Indian management concepts and tried to apply them and share them and enable people to learn the Indian concept of business management. But the problem with the Indian people is that for almost 2 centuries, they were subjugated to British rules, during which they were told so many times that they are useless people, and that has gone into their mind. And therefore, Indian people, even today, lack the confidence that they should have on their own skills and on their own capabilities. They do not value their own traditions, they do not inquire their own traditions. If a Western person says something, they will follow it, that assuming that it is 100% scientific and accurate, let's follow it. But if there are traditions in India, the overall environment is such that people really do not believe that they can be very useful to them and they can be very scientific. They just require a little bit innovation, little bit adaptability for which people are not prepared. Let's talk about Indian philosophy. Now, Indian philosophy has a different concept of business management. Here, people are connected well. The relationship is very important. Emotional bondage is very strong. The employment system is almost lifelong employment. Indian business houses, which are sometimes called traditional Indian business houses, they hire their employees over a long period of time. I have written a book on Marwadi business strategies. You can read that book, where I am talking about Marwadi entrepreneurs and their strategies. I'll just briefly tell a few of those strategies. Typical traditional Marwadi entrepreneurs followed some business strategies which focused on things like very strong bondage with the employee, very high value to the employee. The employee was called the Munim, who was given very high respect and status that of almost a family member. The business organizations were structured around family, whereby the entire family was able to participate in the business. And the same thing applies with other Indian business houses. The Indian concept of marketing was also similar, where the organizations, they wanted to establish long-term relationships. Wherever marketing was practiced, the marketing was establishment of long-term relationship. The purpose was not to sell something. The purpose was to establish bondage. The purpose was to help each other. And the same things I have explained in the Marwadi business strategies and also in other books. The Indian traditions and Indian concepts have always emphasized on very high skill development, focused skill development. If you look at the traditional Indian technologies, all those technologies have thrived because of very high skill efficiency, very high focus on high quality products, skilled products, and use of hands. The traditional Indian artisans, even if they had option of automation, they wanted to go for hand-based technology. The hand-based technology had 2 plus points. One, people enjoyed working. They were masters of their own hands. They had a joy that they had created a wonderful product. and they were offering it to the buyer, saying that this is the product that I have prepared for you. And another important advantage was that people were engaged in some very beautiful, purposeful activity which they were doing in their own home, involving their own surrounding, their own siblings, their own children. They were training their younger ones and they were mastering their own work with 100% dedication. And because of this, there was no unemployment. People got highly skilled, trained, and they were able to prepare wonderful products which were very high quality products. The Western model, on the other hand, emphasized on automation and other similar things. The government of India also did not give any emphasis on artisans, how to enable them to innovate, how to enable them to do something what can reach the global standard. And because of all these things, the traditional Indian artisans are today reduced to bare minimum and their businesses are on the verge of closure. The traditional Indian techniques of marketing are on the verge of collapse. The traditional Indian financial management and other systems are on the verge of collapse. The traditional Marwadi systems of business management are also on the verge of collapse. What I believe is that what we have developed for generations, for centuries, as techniques of business, as techniques of entrepreneurship, as techniques of manufacturing, must be studied, preserved, documented, and if we can make some efforts to improve them, to innovate in them, we should certainly try to innovate so that they can continue and they can help us in developing our population. What the government is doing is to train people in new skills. Training people in new skill, that too in a very short span of time, in 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, may not be very feasible idea, but anyway the government is doing it. But had the government decided to support the traditional Indian artisans, the traditional Indian crafts, the traditional Indian technologies, the traditional methods of doing manufacturing, the traditional business systems of India, they would have easily developed, easily performed exceedingly well, easily, taken new strides, and they would have survived also. The traditional Indian methods of marketing I have explained in one of my blog. If you get time, you can read it on iuemag.com, where I have explained how a traditional Indian jeweler tries to sell his product to the buyer without emphasizing on sales, but emphasizing on relationship building. These kinds of marketing approaches have today disappeared from Indian landscape because everybody is following the same Western business models. I do believe that there is a scope, there is a possibility that there may be some people who may be interested in understanding traditional Indian business management techniques, traditional Indian leadership techniques, traditional Indian manufacturing techniques. So I am very keen to preserve, protect, develop these technologies further and to enable people to learn them. If you happen to have any interest in learning the traditional Indian business management practices, traditional Indian management art, and traditional Indian marketing art, you are welcome. I would be very willing to share with you my knowledge. I know some people who are experts who have been practicing these skills for generations. They still have that skills, but probably they may not be able to preserve these skills for long. They will not be able to impart this skill to new generations because there is no organized system in India for that. But if you have any interest, you can come, learn and spread this knowledge to the whole world. This is a knowledge which is on the verge of extinction, but people like you and me can protect it and can spread it to the next generation. There are two things. The Western business management relies exclusively on excellent public relations, excellent advertising, marketing, and excellent communication system. The Indian traditional system centers around the basic idea of sublimation, spirituality, relationship building, well being, development of everybody, protection and preservation of our ecosystem. The Indian system may not be as good as the Western one in spreading, in marketing, in advertising, in other arts of the modern marketing. But in the times to come, the most important requirement of the world will be sustainability, inclusive growth, a developmental framework which gives opportunities for everybody to grow, develop. In those contexts, we will definitely miss the traditional Indian art, techniques of manufacturing, the Indian traditional technologies of manufacturing, the traditional Indian art of business management. Because Indian business ideas are really wonderful if you look at from the perspective of sustainable development and inclusive growth. Best wishes. I apologize if you think you have no interest in Indian business ideas, then probably you might have wasted your time listening to me.